Anthony William, medical medium, Sunday night. Really nice day to get together here and talk. I'm going to start with reading a quote from Cleanse to Heal right here. So you got Cleanse to Heal. You guys are going to be getting it pretty soon, I think. I mean, the release is Tuesday. So I'm going to read a quote to start with. We're going to talk about other things too, symptoms and conditions. Empowerment is having answers. It's knowing that your body is not attacking itself. It's knowing that your genes or hormones are not responsible for your sickness. That you are not a faulty person. It's knowing that you're not a bad person either, and that you didn't create your illness with your mindset and emotions. It's a really important quote because I'm going to talk about symptoms and conditions tonight. And so that's an important quote to consider. Before the medical medium books, no one knew these truths. In fact, critical to anyone's healing. See, the truth I just read to you, that empowerment is the answer, and it's not your body attacking itself, is a critical truth. It's your shield. And as the years went by, so many sought me out for help in the past, bringing me their symptoms from around the world because they needed to know the truth. When we think our symptoms aren't real or our symptoms are our fault, it's devastating and it could be the biggest problem for so many. Symptoms that many doctors in their own practices have not yet encountered. I can't tell you how many times someone would tell me this. They went to their doctor, and their doctor never saw that symptom before. Never saw that symptom before in their practice. It was new to them. So think about that. Years ago, when people came to me with bizarre symptoms, and doctors never saw those symptoms in their practice, it was new to them. And I would say, yes, I've seen those symptoms before, because a person would ask me and say, they would tell me, have you seen that symptom before, Anthony? That's what a person would always say to me. They would say to me, have you seen that symptom before? And I would say, yes, I've seen that symptom before. I've seen it dozens of times. This was years before I put the books out. And I was known as the guy that people came to with bizarre symptoms that nobody understood or knew about or were aware of on the health scene. It was early on in the health scene. Neurological symptoms that always baffled professionals and still do today. I mean, I hear about it today now, about how it baffles professionals now. Neurological symptoms since exploded, and millions are suffering from them. And seasoned doctors, not first-timers, seasoned doctors, not doctors that just got out of school, seasoned doctors, not doctors that just play on the internet and don't have a practice even though they got out of school. I'm talking about seasoned doctors are familiar with hearing about these symptoms now. But back 10, 20, and even 30 years ago, almost everyone was told they were crazy. If they had a tingle or some numbness or some fatigue or creepy crawlies on their skin or a twitch or a spasm, a buzzing feeling in their body, an internal vibration, they were told they were making it up. And I got known to be the guy that knew they weren't making it up. That's what I got known for. And I got reminded that the other day by someone, a friend of mine, said, you were always known, and this is a person in the health scene for years and years and years, you were always known for the guy, the only guy that anybody knew of at the time for years, that knew women and men weren't making up their symptom, weren't making it up. You know, I'll never forget, you guys, I'll never forget an argument I had with a client's doctor. I'll never forget this argument I had with a client's doctor. My client asked for the doctor and I to be on the phone together. This was a common occurrence that would happen. Clients would ask, can I be on the phone with the doctor? I always loved that because a lot of doctors recommended clients to me over the years, a lot of people to come see me over the years. And for the most part, this always worked out when this happened. But in this instance, her doctor thought her buzzing sound in her ears, the vibration she had humming throughout her body that she would describe was because she needed a psychiatrist. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget as she was on the phone and she was describing the symptoms again about the vibration she had in her body and the buzzing feeling she had in her ears. It wasn't like ringing. It was just a weird, strange buzzing, she would just say. And she would describe this. And he said, you need a psychiatrist. And I was like, okay. I then told him that her symptoms were real. So I told him her symptoms were real and they weren't in her head. And she needs to be heard. He was talking over her, is what he was doing as she began to cry. And I won't forget that. He was talking over her. And she was crying right there on the phone. I told him he was not being nice. I told him he has a responsibility to at least be open to what she is suffering from and not label her crazy. He said again, I'll never forget this. He said, she needs a psychiatrist, Anthony. That's what she needs. And he hung up on both of us. The industry doesn't care about how many women have been hurt emotionally and abused by the industries, and still doesn't, because science and research doesn't have answers. No one is ever held responsible for any of that. The doctor was just an example of a lack of information in the medical world at the time, and still it is there today, but doctors know better not to do that too much anymore. We got some really amazing doctors back then, and we got some really amazing doctors now that would never do that. But back then, it was a lot more of that. A lot of that. Real common occurrence. I'm going to open the book. We're going to talk about some symptoms. And I'm going to describe them to you and tell you the true causes. I think that's really critical. I think it's really important. Causes that are not known to research and science yet. And after I describe the symptoms, I'm going to tell you a personal story that's close to me that I've never told before. So I want to start out with some different symptoms here. I'm going to go to tinnitus. How many of you guys have tinnitus, ringing in the ears? So I'm going to Cleanse to Heal right now. That's what I'm doing. You can pre-order it on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles. Go to the library when it comes out. It's coming out on Tuesday. Book Depository International. So I'm going to go find tinnitus so I know where it is here. And it's my page 547. 600 pages in this book. And the book is packed. It's actually a big book. It's not a small book, so it's actually a big book here. So I'm going to talk about tinnitus, ringing, vibrating, or buzzing in the ears, and even unexplained hearing loss associated with all of it. So what happens is with tinnitus is over the years, and physicians or anything that you're describing tinnitus to, all the different varieties, it would be a bizarre phenomenon. And I heard dozens of times all the different reasons people, or all the different ways people were hearing noises and how their tinnitus was, how their ringing in the ear was and everything. And and it's critical to know and be connected to this. It's critical. And with tinnitus, I want to run over a few things and see if they seem familiar to anybody you know. and anybody dealing with it. A fan running. Okay, so there's tinnitus where if you have a fan running, or air is blowing out of a vent, or air is blowing out of an air conditioner, or air is blowing somehow, or wind is going, that the sound of the ringing will shift and it'll actually sound like a song. It'll sound like a song. It'll go up and around and bounce around and sound like a familiar song. And what happens is it plays tricks on the brain when that occurs. And I've seen this happen with so many people who have suffered with this, where if they have songs in their thought process because they listen to music at one point, or they have a favorite song in their life, and that fan is running or that vent is blowing, and you're hearing the vent blowing, you're hearing the fan blowing, or in the car the fan's blowing, or when you're laying in your bed and you hear any kind of like air circulating, it will actually attach itself to a song you remember or you know. And so as that fan is blowing, your own tinnitus, your ringing or your whistling will actually do a dance with the sound of the airstream along, attaching itself to a song that all of a sudden gets triggered in the memory, and they both work together. This isn't just one rare occurrence for somebody with tinnitus. I've seen this dozens of times over the years, 35 years of helping out thousands upon thousands of people. I never liked this variety of tinnitus because it made people go mad. It made them go mad. And if the industry is never understanding, which it was never understanding in the past, and still really kind of isn't now in so many ways, this has pushed people over the edge. And I have tremendous compassion for the people I've known that have ever gone through this type of tinnitus. And somebody said, "Oh my God, that's so true. I had this, wow. This happens to me," somebody said. Right, wow. So I want to run into it a little bit more. The TV playing version is another one. So tinnitus when the TV's on. That's a whole nother variety of occurrence that happens. And I haven't seen this too many times, but I have seen it enough, and so that means if the TV is on low and you're still hearing your tinnitus at the same time, they blend together into one. That one's a hard one for a lot of people I've seen over the years. Radio playing or music playing. This is different than remembering a song in your head. So I want to talk about this variety. And I talk to doctors now. They don't know any of these varieties. Even guys and gals that are doctors that are in some of the best practices, they didn't even know these varieties. They just know ringing the ear. But still, it's amazing. You have to see enough people. I've seasoned doctors actually do hear about this stuff. You have to see enough people for enough years. But what the whole thing with tinnitus is interesting is, and Spirit of Compassion has connected me with how people feel and how it feels and even almost sounds as they're describing it to me, so it makes it imprintable to me so I can't forget. The radio playing one's a hard one, so music playing in the background. The music playing in the background can interfere with the ringing in the ear and take it and carry it. And they both join and they do a dance together. It ruins the chances of people even being able to hear music anymore. And people who are music lovers, that's a really hard one right there. So I've had tinnitus sufferers that are music lovers that can't listen to the records, can't listen to anything, can't listen to symphonies, can't listen to any kind of classical music, can't listen to anything. The music playing one is really hard. The radio playing one is really hard. The intermittent ringing in the ears, many of you guys probably have dealt with, the intermittent ones. What I don't like is the ones that come when they start in somebody's life, because I'm going to read the causes of tinnitus and all that others, the cause of tinnitus. But I don't like the one that's intermittent where people think somebody's talking to them. So the old excuse was passed off as somebody must be talking to you, or somebody must be talking about you, or you must be picking up a message. You get a ring in the ear. The whole reason that came about is nobody knew that first ring in the ear that you get, those first rings in the ear you get, not just from maybe getting your ears popped from flying in a plane, but it occurs on and off. is the beginning of very early tinnitus. So it's critical to have like books like a book like Cleanse to Heal, or one of the other medical medium books, especially Cleanse to Heal. So you know how to kind of thwart a condition that could be coming on later on. Intermittent tinnitus, with the ringing where it comes and goes, is also annoying because it can come and go with almost like knocking somebody's socks off too, where it becomes almost like a popping or a fluttering with the ring. Any of you guys ever had the fluttering with the ring? So you get the air flutter, you get the popping. That's a whole nother variety where you almost get whoa and you almost fall over. I've seen a lot of people go through that. Or they're not going to fall over, but they have it. A lot of you guys have tinnitus. And I see that now. So I'm glad I'm covering this right now. But the popping, the fluttering in the air, along with the tinnitus, all of that is really difficult for so many people. And so there's a whole nother variety. Then there's the nonstop, always there, along with a whooshing, continual whooshing running in the back of the ring. And that's a whole nother variety that Spirit of Compassion has taught me, and I've been seeing in people. Spirit of Compassion taught me about all these symptoms, training me long before I saw the people. So when the people brought the symptoms to me, I was already educated. I was already taught. I was already trained by Spirit of Compassion for what was coming for so many reasons. It's just unbelievable when I think about it every day, and I think about that. The nonstop tinnitus is difficult, or the one that's all over the place, where it's not even nonstop and continual, where it's a whooshing and a loud noise continually, but it's a noise that goes loud, low, up and down, different pitches, different ways. That's a really hard one there, in different levels. Super loud, then low. Super loud, and then low, and then a different level. So there's that variety too, which is really difficult. And then the deafening kind, where you're losing your hearing at the same time your tinnitus is coming on and getting worse. That one's really hard for people. And you can't use a fan, not a fan, but you can't use like an air cleaner or a white noise maker in your room when you're sleeping at night. And you're just having such a difficult time. The kinds of tinnitus that stop people from sleeping at night are brutal. Always been worried about people going through that all these years. The kind that pushes people over the edge I've seen. So these are some of those. Somebody's asking about vertigo or vitiligo. They're asking about vitiligo. I cover that in Cleanse to Heal with the cause and everything. So tinnitus, ringing, vibrating, or buzzing in the ears, and unexplained hearing loss. True cause. When decibel damage or injury to the ear have been ruled out, and it's mystery, the cause here is one of the over 60 varieties of Epstein-Barr virus burrowing itself into the labyrinth of the inner ear. So the labyrinth of the inner ear, okay, that's a nerve channel. The virus burrows itself in the labyrinth of the inner ear. So that's the Epstein-Barr virus. And that's ahead of research and science. That information may finally come out down the road. Instead of coming out through here, it'll come out somewhere in research and science. If they care enough, if research and science cares enough about people, but we kind of got that feeling they don't from the wreckage and disaster of what's happened in chronic illness all these decades and all these years. So the labyrinth in the inner ear, the virus enters that labyrinth, that nerve channel, and it inflames it. A lot of times you can have the neurotoxin from the virus attaching itself to the nerve channel, the labyrinth of the inner ear, and inflaming it too and swelling it. It causes inflammation that's undetectable by current medical testing. Now, if you're a seasoned person who's been chronically ill, you know medical testing isn't where it's always at. We want to get tests. We want to get medical testing. We want to talk to our doctor. I've always said that every day, all these years, to anyone and everyone. But it doesn't mean the tests are going to find something or figure something out or detect something. The labyrinth swells inside the inner ear, causing pitch to change when sounds enter the ear. When nerves are swollen inside the labyrinth, they can also vibrate and emit sounds, such as ringing, buzzing, popping, and even fluttering. And then I talk about all the different supplementation and dosages you can use in the book for that one. Let's move on to heart palpitations. Look for that one right now. Heart palpitations. Okay, I have these right here. Any of you guys dealing with any kind of heart palpitations, any mystery ones? There's different levels of heart palpitations, different experiences people have, different ways it occurs. So I'm wondering if you guys are dealing with this. Somebody said that understanding the ailment is mind-blowing. I think you said that. It's definitely mind-blowing. Everybody should understand their symptom. They should be empowered to understand their symptom. It's so important. Somebody said, thank you. I get palpitations for many years now. I was told it was hormonal. That's an insult, of course. We know how that works. Women, blaming the hormones for the problems is probably one of the most negligent ways of handling women's chronic health conditions, because it's like, oh, you're hormonal. Oh, it's hormones. That's why you have all these mystery conditions, and that's why you have all these neurological symptoms. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's and we're still there. We're still there. It's not like it's getting better. It's really sad. So there's when you're dealing with heart palpitations, like the fish flopping around inside of you. So it's almost like you deal with that where the fish, I always said the fish flopping around because when I was a child, fishing was like a fun thing to do when you're like a child. It's like, it's really fun. Catch those little sunfish and all that and throw them back in the pond. And Spirit of Compassion would say, what people experience with heart palpitations is like a fish flopping around inside their chest. And it can be intermittent and it can occur at different times. And so I remember when people were starting to come to me later on, when I got a little older, as I would hear that, I would hear their heart, they would talk about their heart palpitations. And I'd say it's like a fish flopping around in there. And they'd be like, that's exactly what it is, Anthony. It's a fish flopping around in there. And then there's the kind you can hear in your own ear. So the heart palpitation where you hear it in your own ear. So there's that kind too, where you get the heart palp, but you actually hear it in your ear. And that's a whole nother kind too that people deal with. And, I've seen that go in a lot of different directions for people. I've seen it flip to the other ear. The other thing is I've seen people have heart palpitations while they're laying down in bed, and then it goes into both ears because they're laying down in the bed and their head's on their pillow. And then there's kind where they're not laying down. So it's not vibrating up. So it's different ways it can do that and send that noise up there. Or that vibration. It's unbelievable. So there's that. And then the kind that comes at night. So the kind of heart palpitation that only comes at night. It comes at night when you're hitting REM. So when you're hitting that state of sleeping. And then you get the heart palp, and then you wake up. How many women had to deal with that and still do? Where they're falling asleep, and they're all of a sudden as they're falling asleep or about to fall asleep, and get into at least that first stage of sleep, boom, their heart palp wakes them up, and then they get anxiety and their blood's rushing and their heart's now racing a little bit or beating a little faster, and then they calm down, they get a cup of tea, they calm down or whatever, and they go back to bed and they're laying down. And then it happens again. Spirit of Compassion used to always say to me to tell people, lay on your side. Try to lay on your side. And you try that until you can finally fall asleep and bypass that problem. And there's the kind the kind you can hear in your own ear, but the kind you can also feel vibrate through your whole entire body. So it's not just hearing it. You get the heart palp, but you feel it everywhere. And that one is kind of rare, but I wanted to call attention to it. I have seen it. There's the kind that you feel at the top of your chest too. So there's that one. So it's not just the one here. You feel it at the top of your chest. So it's right up here. And that heart palp really scares people because they go like this. And that's how they feel. They go like this and they get scared. And that one is also kind of nerve-wracking for some people. Then there's the kind you get in your throat. So you get the heart palp, but it goes to your throat. So you feel it in your throat. That's a whole nother one right there. And people can feel like they're dying when they get them. They can feel like they're having a heart attack, or they feel like they're dying. And it's really hard for people. And they can get a diagnosis sometimes, tachycardia, arrhythmia, mitral valve prolapse. And they can get those different diagnoses. But somebody else's mitral valve prolapse doesn't have any heart palpitations. And somebody else's arrhythmia is not like that. Somebody else's tachycardia is not like that. And then there's the chest tightness kind, where you get the tingles and numbness with it. You get the heart palpitation, chest tightness, and the tingles and numbness. You get that kind, you guys. And I've seen that 100 times over the years. And I've always had to remember these because Spirit trained me and taught me all through my childhood and early on to be prepared so that you never forget. And you never get people suffering. And you never forget what they've been through with it. And Spirit of Compassion has always told me people are going to have a lot of symptoms. And no one's going to understand them. I'm like, no one? And Spirit of Compassion said, no. A lot of these, they can't be understood. And here we are in what? 2020, and they're not understood. I want to read a little bit about it. And keep in mind, Epstein-Barr virus, along with other viruses, have a lot of different varieties and mutations and strains. I'm talking about Cleanse to Heal right here, if you just logged on right here. Somebody said, yes, my mitral valve prolapse, I have to breathe like a blowfish. That's not easy. True cause of heart palpitations right here. When heart palpitations and fibrillations occur for no reason that a doctor can't identify, what's usually going on is a low-grade viral infection sitting inside a stagnant, sluggish liver, creating byproduct in viral sludge, such as neurotoxins and viral cell casings that leave the liver and accumulate in the heart valves. This jelly-like residue buildup can create inconsistencies in heart rhythm as the heart valves sometimes stick slightly. Also, viral neurotoxins can enter the brain and contaminate neurons that are associated with nerves that travel directly to the heart. This can provide an electrical inconsistency, prompting the heart to palpitate. Both of these causes are unknown to medical research and science. I didn't get this off the internet. All the medical medium information comes from my source. And that's why millions of people have healed all around the world from medical medium books. And viruses, like Epstein-Barr, create a neurotoxin. That neurotoxin floats to the brain and short circuits neurons that actually are supposed to be responsible for sending signals to the nerves that actually are associated to the heart, which can cause a lot of different mystery palpitations that I'm actually talking about. And byproduct from these viruses affect nerves, and these are neurotoxins. So that's heart palpitations. We'll move on to the next one, anxiety. That's one right there that I have tremendous compassion for people who have suffered with anxiety for years. Thanks for hanging on with me. Woke up with my heart flopping like a fish at 2 a.m. So sorry to hear that. It's just so hard, and I'm sorry you're going through that. I truly am. So I got anxiety right here, so in the book, and I'm going to read some true causes of that. So the kind that's in the stomach is the anxiety that is really hard for a lot of people. And I call it the flip-flop, is what I call it. And Spirit of Compassion has always said to me, that's one way you can explain it. I said, what can I call it? The flip-flop, when I was younger. And Spirit of Compassion said, yes, you can. That's one way of like trying to relate to people who are suffering with it. And the flip-flop with the stomach, where you feel like the stomach flips, or it's in a continual flip state where it wants to flip. These are vagus nerves and phrenic nerves going down to the stomach, and they're getting signals from the brain. And the stomach feels like it wants to twist or flip or flop. That kind of anxiety is really hard for people because they don't eat or they can't eat. And that's a tricky one for them. And when they eat, that's a whole nother problem that happens. And then they get food in them, and it feels really difficult to deal with because the nerves that are attached to the intestinal linings in the stomach are hypersensitive. So the stomach feels like doing the flip-flop and the tightening while they're actually eating. And then that's a tricky thing. So then they can't eat, and then they don't want to eat. The flip-flop one's really hard because when you have it and you're about to go to bed at night and you're still living with that flip-flop stomach and you're just about to lay down in bed, it's really hard for people. I've seen people suffer so much over the years with the flip-flop variety like that. And that's just one kind. And this isn't just like mild anxiousness that people say, well, I have anxiety, or another person says I have anxiety. I have respect for anybody that says they have anxiety, even when it's the mildest. But there's different levels, and we have to really be open to the fact that there's really critical anxiety issues that people have, the kind that just cripple you and make life so hard, like the chest tightness one. The chest tightness anxiety is a tough one for people, where their chest tightens, but then you get people that have the chest tightening, but they can function and still do things. But then you get people who have the chest tightness and the throat tightness, and they can't function, they can't do things. They can't get through their day. And that's really hard for people to have that variety. And that's the vagus nerve and the phrenic nerves coming from the brain and going down. And I'm going to talk about the cause that's involved with the vagus and phrenic nerves. It's funny because I was talking to a doctor last week, and he said nobody knew the vagus nerve even existed. Of course, science and research knew the vagus nerve existed. But in practice and in the world out there in health, no one even talked about the vagus nerve. And he said, you've spent 35 years educating people about the vagus nerve so we can be here where we are today, so we could know how the vagus nerve is responsible for everything. And that came from medical medium, he said. Like medical medium, not research and science. And the vagus nerve plays a huge role in all of the anxiety. And the reason why we even know that now, he said, was because of your information. I said, it's not my information, it's Spirit of Compassion's information. He goes, I know. He goes, I know it comes from Spirit of Compassion. He goes, and he's funny. This doctor friend of mine says, wherever it comes from, he says. He goes, whether you're just a genius and it just comes to you, or wherever. I said, it comes from Spirit of Compassion. You know that. He goes, I know. He goes, it's just unbelievable that all this intricate medical information that's advanced, just you put it in here, and there's not one line that comes from the internet or a book or anywhere else. And it's only yours. I said, once again, Spirit of Compassion. And he said, the vagus nerve, no one even talked about that. And now we talk about that commonly all the time because of you. And I said, thank you. I said, well, that's reassuring anyway that I'm doing something right. And the vagus nerve plays so much of a role there. The kind, and so much so it can even go up. The vagus nerve runs through you, through your neck, right down the middle, goes down to your chest and touches your stomach, and then branches off with all these nerves going into the intestinal tract on the edges. And you can get the dry mouth kind of anxiety where your mouth goes dry. Anyone who has anxiety, you're not alone, and hang in there. You're going to heal. That's incredible. I had to read that one to everybody because that was so important. I had to read that one. The dry mouth is connected to the vagus nerve. That's the whole thing there. And so that's a really difficult kind. Then the kind where you can't breathe, where you can't take a deep breath. I know so many of you have dealt with it, where you can't get a deep breath in, and you're like, and it's like your breath stops at a certain place where you can't and get enough air, even though you're getting air, even though you're getting plenty of air. And there's that variety of anxiety. It's so hard for people, and I'm so sorry people go through that. And there's the kind that can throw you on the ground and have you flip-flopping on the ground. And I've seen that so much, where your eyes almost roll back of your head almost, and you're just on the ground where you got to sit still and lay still, and you got to lay there, and you got to keep calm, and you got to do that, and you're laying on the ground. And there's that kind of anxiety. And then there's the kind of anxiety, and this anxiety right here, and This anxiety is interesting. Spirit of Compassion taught me about people. This anxiety is the anxiety that you get because you have anxiety. And I remember 3 decades ago helping people with that because they didn't know that that was happening. That they had anxiety, it was doubled. It was because they had anxiety. Even if they didn't have an anxiety attack, they had anxiety because they had anxiety. So they have anxiety because they had anxiety. No one understands that. And they just don't know how that works out there. And Spirit of Compassion taught me that one. And that's a tough one because anxiety, people that are recovered from anxiety, they'll have anxiety because they had it or that they have it. It's a really difficult one too. The anxiety that makes it impossible for you to make a decision is a brutal one, or impossible to allow you to think. That anxiety is really harsh, where you can't even think and you can't even make a decision, or you can't even walk. You know, medical medium information has allowed a lot of people to heal, a lot of women and men, so they can even drive again. I'll never forget hearing about a mom years ago that was able to drive her children to school because her anxiety got better from medical medium information. And then when the book came out, I heard that more than once and more than enough. And you hear that a lot. There's so many women, they can't drive a car anymore because of their anxiety. That's not empowerment. That's disempowerment when you're struggling with the suffering of an illness or an ailment like anxiety and you feel disempowered. Empowerment is having the answers and getting your life back. That's true empowerment. I talk about that all through Cleanse to Heal, you guys. I want you to know. The kind of anxiety where you're shaking and your heart is racing and you're getting scared. So there's that kind of anxiety. You're shaking, your heart's racing, and you get scared. And, you know, it's important to know. And the kind that stops you from thinking, I said, the kind that gets you scared. And then there's the kind that develops, like I said, when you do have anxiety. But then there's anxiety that comes with, like, burning mouth. That's anxiety too, where people get the anxiety from burning mouth. They get anxiety from like burning. They feel like a burning feeling inside their head. They get that anxiety. There's a kind of where people feel, and there's a kind of people feel anxious. I'm talking about the real hard ones, the real difficult ones that so many people go through. So many difficult ones and harsh ones. Cleanse to Heal. I'm just showing you what I'm reading from here. So I want to go into some neurological symptoms when I have a chance. First, I want to read anxiety and anxiousness. True cause of anxiety. When anxiety interferes with your life, it's caused by toxic heavy metals such as mercury, aluminum, and copper, viruses such as one of the over 60 varieties of Epstein-Barr virus or one of the over 30 varieties of shingles can cause anxiety. Shingles virus, or a combination of both toxic heavy metals and viruses, which is the normal way it usually happens. Most of the time, it's both at once, and with one cause more dominant depending on the different individual case. I'm not reading that good on that line. Anxiety can also be triggered, accelerated, or heightened by emotional conflict. We know that. Although toxic heavy metals and or virus must be present for the anxiety to become sustained, chronic, or longer term. So that's an important line right there. Yeah, we can have emotional conflict and have anxiety about it. We can have an anxiety about something that's stressful. We can have anxiety about maybe doing a speech somewhere or talking in front of a room of people. But for something to go prolonged and for something to go into a place where it becomes chronic, you have to have the viruses and metals there so it can become chronic. All of this is ahead of science and research. It's the whole point of why millions have healed from medical medium books around the world. Viruses feed off of toxic heavy metals, release neurotoxins. It inflames the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve connection, remember? I was talking about how it's involved in anxiety. The vagus nerve inflames because the neurotoxins inflame it. And then we end up getting a swelling of the vagus nerve. When that swelling happens, anxiety can trigger really easily. I talk about supplements, and we've got the cleanses in here, 7 different cleanses in here to help. But it's not just cleanses. If you're not even in the mood for a cleanse, the amount of information to heal in here is unlike anything else that's ever been out there. Medical medium books have always had, since the first one, the most information there is on chronic illness for how to heal, how to finally heal mystery chronic illness and symptoms. This book takes it even to a new level that's I've never done before. I want to go to neurological symptoms right here. Neurological symptoms: tightness in the chest, trembling hands, twitches and spasms, muscle weakness, tingles and numbness, restless legs, restlessness, weakness of the limbs, muscle spasms, aches and pains. Talk about this a little bit. There's a type of, here's a neurological symptom that people have dealt with where they can't watch television or they can't watch movies that are too stimulating. Their nervous systems can't handle it. They get so sick that their central nervous system gets too frazzled for them to handle any kind of conflict on television, any kind of conflict, any kind of stressful situation in a movie. And they have to pick and choose the films that they're watching carefully. They have to pick and choose it carefully. And there's that kind of neurological symptom. The doctors don't understand that so many people have come to me over the years that have had, and I remember Spirit educating me about this when I was younger, about that very symptom, about won't be able to watch TV. And I'd say to Spirit of Compassion, as the 10-year-old boy, I'd say, well, how can they not watch TV? I don't understand. How come they can't watch a movie? How come they can't watch Jaws? How come they can't watch, a movie? How come they can't watch E.T.? How come they can't watch something? That's what I said. And Spirit of Compassion said it's just too stimulating. It's too much when you have a nervous system condition, when you have your nerves are sensitive. And so, and so I always told people to watch things that are look for things that are much more calmer. Maybe something that's back in the past, things that are calming and things that are slower and more soothing versus things that are made now in film and TV and everything. So we say try to find something that actually kind of can be soothing and be easy and not so intense in any way for people who have neurological symptoms. Neurological symptoms can get in the way of exercising, where you can't even exercise. You can't run, you can't, and people who suffer with neurological symptoms of any kind, they can't run, they can't do things, they can't all of that. So it's something very important to know. And so neurological symptoms, you can get twitches and spasms where they're pinging and ricocheting all over the body, like they're everywhere. They're all over the legs, they're all over the whole body. You can get burning skin. That's a whole other thing too. We get the neurological symptoms where it's the burning skin, not eczema related. I'm not talking about eczema and psoriasis. I'm talking about burning skin. And the burning skin is nerve endings, all hypersensitive deep underneath the skin. And you're feeling the burning skin in different places and all over the body. You can get all that: burning mouth, burning jaw line, burning gum line, all that kind of thing. And then the chronic fatigue where your legs are like sandbags or you can't get out of bed. You feel like you're falling through your bed with the fatigue. That's a whole other thing. So there's so many different symptoms. And with chronic fatigue, it's intense because you might have the kind where you can't lift up your arms, where you can't exercise, you can't walk, you can't function. And that's really difficult to deal with right there. So chronic fatigue syndrome, I just want to run over that a little bit. True cause of chronic fatigue syndrome. Thanks to medical medium books, research and science is actually considering this now. Any of the over 60 varieties of Epstein-Barr virus, accompanied by a toxic heavy metal load such as mercury and aluminum, can create this condition that I call neurological fatigue, which is far more pronounced and limiting than simply being tired. A high-fat, high-protein diet accelerates the condition, something to just know that's so critical. When you're really sick, all that matters. Food matters when you're really sick. Because disempowerment isn't holding back eggs. It's holding back your health and losing your health in your life. So taking away eggs is critical, and I'm going to talk about that the next time we actually do something. Chronic fatigue syndrome, where you feel like you can't hold your head up. You can't hold your head up. You can't pull your head up off the bed. You can't get up. You can't pull yourself up. You can't hold on to things. You can't hold on to things. Even if you have a pillow behind your neck laying there, you feel like your neck is about to break. That's the kind of chronic fatigue syndrome I've seen over and over again for years, which doctors didn't understand back then. Now they're getting there. It feels like your head is going to fall through the pillow. That kind of chronic fatigue syndrome. Somebody said, thank you for acknowledging. Thank you for being here and staying through this. It's really, really important that you're here. I want to tell you guys a little personal story. So I want to go into that. This is all coming from Cleanse to Heal, by the way. I want to tell you a little personal story that's dear to me, that I haven't told anybody. When I was 5 years old, I was on the floor of the living room. I was laying next to an old guitar on the floor. And I was gently plucking one string at a time while listening to Spirit of Compassion. He was describing symptoms and voicing them into my ear. They were mystery neurological symptoms is what they were. So mystery neurological symptoms is what he was voicing in my ear. That's what I was hearing. I was hearing symptoms of what people go through in my ear while 5 years old, laying on the floor in the living room, plucking a guitar string to go along with it. As I hit the string on the guitar, Spirit of Compassion would speak. I'll never forget this. And it was a beautiful combination as I repeated the words I heard. So I would repeat the symptoms that I'm hearing while laying on the floor, plucking a guitar string in the middle of the living room while 5 years old. I heard how these symptoms make somebody feel. And I heard how these symptoms felt in somebody's body. And I almost can feel it as a sensation as the guitar string was plucked. And it burned it in me. It burned it into my mind at a young age. And it made it unforgettable. It was prepping me for the symptoms to come from so many people. My great-grandfather, which was my dad's grandfather, was sitting on the couch with my dad at this time. He knew I had a gift. And he told my dad, he has answers to people's pain. And life is not going to be easy for him. There is always going to be someone or somebody that doesn't understand where he gets his information from. And they are going to try to take him down. I can only hope that he finds some moments of peace throughout his life. Something my great-grandfather said to my dad. It reminded me what the naysayers and trolls want to do. It reminded me how they want my gift suppressed, how they want to suppress my gift. It reminded me on how they want to stomp out my light. It reminded me how they want to shut me up. It reminded me how they want me silenced. They want me to be silenced. They want to silence me. And it reminded me how they want to spin tales and spin everything good that I brought to light in this lifetime. They want me generic, it reminded me, like being the fruit and vegetable guy. But it's nothing new to me. Nothing new to me at all. I've witnessed this on and off my whole life, just like my great-grandfather said I would. My great-grandfather was a devout Christian, as Christian as anyone can be. And he knew my road wasn't going to be easy hearing a voice. But he knew the voice I heard was unmistakable. He knew it was unmistakable and that it was real. My dad said to my great-grandfather, while they both were sitting on the couch that day, my dad said to him, a true gift is challenged. It's challenged by others that wish they had it. I was talking to my dad yesterday, and he reminded me of this story. And he asked me to tell you guys. I'm getting choked up about it. He asked me to tell you guys this story. I said, Dad, you want me to tell him the story? He said, you got to tell him this story. You would like my dad and my mom. You would like them both. My dad would give the shirt off his back to anyone. A piece of fruit could be sitting on a tree. He had been waiting to ripen all summer long so he can eat it and enjoy it. Because, life is precious and time is precious in life. And if a stranger happened to appear or happened to be there, my dad would pluck that fruit off the tree that he waited for all summer long, and he would give it to them right there. I know because I've seen it happen. I've watched it. I shook my head like, what? I wouldn't have even done that. He told me the other day, you keep on giving to people, Anthony. That's what he said. Everything you got, like you always have. You give people everything you got that struggle and suffer. Because they struggle and suffer the most out there when they don't feel good. And you give them everything they got like you always have. And don't listen to the noise, he said. He said, don't listen to the noise of the ones that pretend to care about others. He said, don't listen to the noise of the ones that pretend to care about others, but only care about themselves. That's what he said. And don't know the truth. Cleanse and Heal is going to help save a lot of lives, you guys. It's going to help save a lot of lives. This is a book like no other. Every line is life-saving. And every line you can hold on to. I know you can heal. I believe in you. And I stand with you 100%. I love you. And I'm heading over to Facebook Live. You can come over if you feel like talking about this stuff. Bless your heart. Take care. I'll see you Tuesday, too, because I'm going to be around Tuesday. All right.